Welcome back to another episode of The Hit. My name is James Layton, CEO and founder of Anderson James. This is the podcast where every single week I bring you a leader from our sector to discuss some of the biggest challenges in UK housing today. Today I was delighted to be joined by Aileen Evans, Chief Executive of Grand Union Housing. We spoke at length around her tenure as president of the CIH, how she used that time to really be an ambassador for mental health in the sector, having overcome some of her own mental health challenges. We look at how we can make housing a career choice for people coming through and how we can attract the next generation of talent. I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you do, I'd ask that you like and subscribe. Aileen, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Lovely to be here.
Been looking forward to this. We're recording just after a bank holiday, but I've been looking forward to this over the weekend, so I've done my prep. But as I always like to start, would you mind just giving the listeners an introduction to yourself if they don't know you already?
So I'm Aileen Evans. I am Chief Exec at Grand Union Housing Group, a wonderful housing association who work in Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire, around there. I sit on the board of the Chartered Institute of Housing, where I hope I add a bit of value in guiding what next for our profession in terms of education support, but also really interested and supportive of the CIH's policy work. And I'm a former president of the CIH, which is a huge privilege because members vote for you to be a president, and it's really quite humbling that they voted for me. So I thought I was going to be jolly enough round the world doing stuff, and actually it coincided with the pandemic where I sat in my kitchen for a year. So that's me.
Lovely. And I mean, you've just mentioned it, but one thing that when I was doing my research is it was interesting to see how you used your presidency in terms of the CIH from a shining a light on a mental health perspective. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the journey? I know you've just said how it came about, but also like what you enjoyed in that period while you were president of the CIH.
So one of the things that the CIH presidency allows you to do is to talk about something for a year that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
And I have a backstory in terms of my mental health, my father's mental health and the impact on us, my husband's mental health, and and actually and my daughter now actually. So for me, it was an incredibly personal thing. We did not intend to be talking about mental health necessarily in a pandemic, but my God, it was very fortuitous, I think, that we were talking about that in a pandemic. We didn't plan that particularly. So it came. So the focus on mental health came from a very, very personal space. But actually, most of us can tell those stories. And for me, I wanted to help make employers better in terms of their work-related practice in terms of mental health. But also, I felt that if, as a senior leader in the sector, I used the platform to talk about how I felt and things that impacted on me, that might make it easier for others. So that was where the campaign came from. I was very fortunate to have loads of people who helped with that. And so in a pandemic, I was talking on Zoom quite a lot of the time or on Teams around taking care of your mental health. Actually, it's something I'm really, really passionate about. I had an email from my new chair. We have a new chair at Grand Union, Steve Benson, who is wonderful. And I responded to him over the weekend, and he responded to me back saying, I don't expect you to reply over the weekend. I thought, well, right, okay, that sounds like me. So it is something that we try and practice, and I am really quite focused on guarding my mental health now and recognising the signs in people around me. We all know when somebody's not okay. I think actually calling it out and having a conversation that enables a difference to be made is what we should be here for, really.
No, I agree, and it's lovely to hear that. I think the pandemic was good for not for many things, but one thing it did allow people to do was open up about how they felt, I think, more. And I noticed that within my teams. What were some of the things that you've implemented for yourself? Because I'm always interested in this as a leader of a business myself, around guarding that mental health and making sure you make time for you and make time for your family, etc.
So 4 years ago, if you'd have mentioned the word Aileen and daily exercise in the same sentence, people would probably have laughed at you. But actually, I do some sort of exercise every day. I spend time with my kids having fun, and so I've been much more focused. For example, we went into London a couple of weeks ago to see a play. I'll book theatre, stuff that we can enjoy together. Live, I'm a huge fan of live music, and that was really hard during the pandemic, that I couldn't get, and all the wonderful things that happened on Zoom and Skype and stuff over the pandemic was great, but it isn't a substitute for being in the same room with really talented musicians. No. So I'm going to see Michael Bublé in a couple of weeks. I've got tickets for Peter Gabriel. Showing my age now, aren't I? So Jules Holland, we've got stuff planned that enables me to look forward to. I read books, I knit socks. I can't actually focus on anything else when I'm knitting a pair of socks, because it's fine, intricate work, and I think about the wall and the feel of it in my hands. So loads of stuff really that I do now, that I didn't do because I did get consumed actually at one point with work, and then felt I'm not doing myself a service. And if I'm not doing myself a service, I'm not doing my employer a service. So I need to find things that help me be fresh every day to come and tackle some of the huge problems that we've got in the country and in the sector. So for me, it's about making sure that I'm in a good place to be able to do that. And I work actually quite hard at that now. And I nag other people to do it. So I do videos at work and say, it's dark nights now, so make sure you get out for a walk in the day, or share your gardening tips, or, tell us what you've been doing that helps you.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. One thing I've noticed when I'm not protecting my mental health, I'm not a good leader either. I think that you're not present in the room, you're always somewhere else, and actually you become worse at the job by weirdly focusing on the job all the time. And it's one thing that I've observed. I was going to ask you later on, because I know we want to come on to Grand Union, but how have you encouraged others? I know you just mentioned about gardening tips and all that sort of stuff, but as a leader, as a chief executive, how do you spot the signs of someone's mental health deteriorating? And secondly, how do you encourage people, the preventative stuff, to make sure that they are looking after themselves and they are doing the things they need to do to protect their mental health?
So we've put a lot of practical support in. So it's twofold. I think for me, it's about organisational kindness and compassion. And that is about people being kind and encouraging a culture where people are kind. One of our team bought me a scarf the other day. I came into my office and there was this scarf in a bag with a card from somebody said, I had a scarf like this and you admired it once, so I took a chance and bought it for you to thank you for being such a kind leader, and the fact that I'm the happiest I've ever been at work. Now, not everybody at Grand Union feels like that, I think, but there is a bit when, I do inductions and people say people are really kind here, or people post on our intranet. Somebody did something about Easter that said, I'm really happy to be sharing Easter with my wonderful colleagues in this wonderful organisation. Do you know, that sort of stuff makes me cry. It brings me to tears. Because for me, it's about, and the board do this as well, the board have a culture of openness, and one of our board members talked about his nervous breakdown in a blog on our intranet. So it's all pervasive. You make it okay for people to talk about it. You make it known that whatever people's issues, they will be supported.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you do that, people come and work for you. People come and, we had one person who said, well, I came to work here specifically because you've got good mental health support. And I know I sometimes need good mental health support, but actually I haven't needed it quite so much because I know I've got it. It's perverse, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But we also do practical things, like we've got mental health first aiders. We talk about mental health a lot. We have groups around menopause, for example. We coach. So we have quite a lot of our, we've about 5 or 6 trained coaches in the business. Coaching is our preferred style of management and actually has been for a lot of years. And we do really practical things. We have fresh fruit on the first of the month, opportunities to get together and celebrate things. People, very often people will need some community, and we had a kitchen put in at our new office, a really decent catering kitchen, because people talk over food. And if you create opportunities for people to have conversations, so the maintenance team have a breakfast on the first Wednesday of the month, and you can smell bacon cooking because the managers are cooking bacon sarnies and vegetarian and vegan alternatives, I would add, for the team. And so it's that sort of thing. We also partner with an organisation called CFED, because one of the biggest things that drives poor mental health is worry about money. And so the Centre for Financial Education is an organisation that provides free financial advice to we pay for it, obviously, but free financial advice to our colleagues, from anything from debt to mortgages to cheapest broadband to all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Pension advice, they do all sorts of stuff like that. So there's a mix of practical and cultural. For me, it is about trying my hardest every day to lead with kindness and to lead with curiosity about people. I'll go and people feel that they can come and chat and talk to someone. Last year sometime, somebody just walked in and said, "Could I just come in your office because I need a hug because I'm having a panic attack?" Okay, so what do you need? And actually, they felt that they could do that. That's, again, something that's indicative of a culture where people know that they'll be supported both emotionally and practically. And that's actually, they're the things that we've tried to do, because why wouldn't you do that? It's just human. It is, yeah. Support for the human condition. Why wouldn't we do that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing that I do think's made it worse, certainly, my team, I've got a variety of ages and generations, and I notice even in my daughter, like, mental health becoming a thing that's more present in younger people. She's 13, and I can see some of those signs already. What do you think technology has done to mental health? Because clearly, I'm really interested in this. We let everyone work from wherever they wanted, and we started to come back to the office a little bit more, and mainly because of that collaboration community feel, really. But where do you stand on that? I feel that we can sometimes isolate people at home, especially if there's no office place or therefore place for them to go. What's your view on that, and how technology's made it worse, better?
I mean, I think technology has brought us some wonderful, wonderful innovations that have enabled properly flexible working. But I think people need the opportunity to do both. So we had a colleague during lockdown who did not want to be at home. And so she came in every day. She did the post. We kept the office open. We didn't shut it. We kept the office open for those people who needed to be, and because it was really easy for them to space out, so that was fine. But she was able to be at home, at work. She was doing the post. She was scanning stuff to people. It wasn't her job, but actually we kind of just found a way for it to work for her. And we had people with kids under 5 who were in small homes, because actually we build not big enough homes. We don't build enough homes, and we don't build them big enough. But that's a battle for another day. So we let people come in, and actually people need the choice.
They do.
And that's what we have done. I'm concerned if we don't see people for a while. And we'll check in on them. And we did check in quite a bit during the pandemic. We did make sure that we checked in on people. I would do walk-in one-to-ones, and actually I've kept up that habit. So somebody's coming round tomorrow, and I live in an area with some lovely woodland, and we're doing a walk-in one-to-one. So out in the fresh air, and that's, you know, that's kind of me walking the talk, really. So yeah, I think as organisations, we need to think about what works best for us and what works best for our customers. Because actually, generally speaking, if it will work best for us, we'll get the best out of people for it to work for their customers. I think there's a bad side of technology in that you can feel always on.
Yeah,
and so
I agree.
And so, you know, that I have threatened to disconnect people from the system if they, you know, and I've done it with kindness, and I've not done it. But for me, it's about saying, we don't need that from you at that point in your weekend. Stop it. It's not expected. And, you know, talking about your children, and, you know, I grew up in a home with no language for feelings. My parents did not talk about how they felt. If I want to grow mentally healthy adults out of my children, then I need to be a mentally healthy role model and talk about how I feel to them.
Agree.
And so I do that, and I'll say, do you know what? I'm feeling a bit stressed today because of so and so, so and so, so and so. But it will be all right because I look after myself doing this, or this will happen, or that will happen, or I will ask people for help. Because you know, my mental health crisis and my husband's mental health crisis, I think, grew because we weren't able to talk. And actually, I want my kids to be able to talk and seek help. And I have to role model that.
Yeah, we all do. And certainly, I didn't speak to my mum about my mental health when I was younger, but it's a thing that I'm really pleased to say that's become more the norm now, and I hope it continues that way. And one thing that I love about you, and one thing that when I've been following you on LinkedIn, you're very free and speak out, and I know you speak at conferences, and you've done some columns on Inside Housing. How much of a responsibility do we have as a sector to make sure we do speak out? I think out of 30 episodes I've done, the word bravery has come up 20 of those times, because I think we sometimes shy behind not saying things to upset the apple cart. But how important for you is it, and what is the responsibility of our sector to make sure we're speaking out on key issues, would you say?
Well, I have really strong views about this. I think we have an absolute responsibility as a sector to talk about the impact of government and other policies on the ground, not in a way that's overtly political, not in a way that says you're all bad or you're all good or this would be better. It's in a way that says, this is what's happening on the ground. Is this what you really meant? We published a report on last Monday, that showed that that people don't have the benefit system isn't delivering enough for people to live on by actually quite a lot. It's by 30% of our caseload, and these are 60% of them are people who are claiming benefits because they're working and their wages aren't enough, and it's still not enough for them to live on. They can't afford shampoo or a haircut or food or to have their heating on. Now we've got that data. I think it's my responsibility to talk about it and to partner with the sector and others interested to say, is it right that so many of our citizens do not have enough money to cover basic needs? And actually, I think that's where we as a sector and we as organisation, I don't feel particularly brave doing it. For me, I'm just talking about injustice. And so people tell me, oh, it's really brave that you do it. I'm thinking, well, I'm not. We're just telling people stories and using our data. Mm-hmm. It's not. There's nothing fabricated and just saying, is this right in 2023? Is this right? I don't think it is. Come on, let's work together to do something about it. And so, yeah, I absolutely do feel we've got a responsibility. I think we need to be proportionate about the way we do it. I think we need to be polite and respectful, engage in debate. I think we have lost the ability in this country and probably worldwide, really, to constructively disagree. I think we think that if somebody I think current debate is often characterised by, if I am right, you are wrong, and what's more, you're a bad person. That's not how I feel about stuff. I'm quite prepared to debate and discuss things with people and have my mind changed where I see evidence to do that. But actually, for me, we just need to. And I think I learned quite late on, actually, that, you need to know your colours to the mast and stand for something. And so I know my colours to the mast and stand for something. And that's kind of, people, I expect to a bit like Marmite. People will take it or leave it. It's absolutely fine. But I need to be able to sleep at night knowing that I've done the right thing. And that's why I do it. And that's why I'm really lucky that Grand Union has a strategic objective to use its voice for good. And so by publishing that work and by loads of us talking about it, actually it's Grand Union using its voice for good. I just front it.
Yeah, and look, I feel the same way. I use my platform for good, and I'm proud that I do. But I would say that sometimes I sit there on my LinkedIn ready to write a post and think, this is just going to end up in confrontation, and I don't want confrontation. But I do think people have got to be braver like you and just speak their mind. Look, if that's your opinion, that's your opinion. I do think you're right in the confrontational aspects, because there's always that one person that wants to twist your story into a bad thing. And I think if you come from a place of good, it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, as long as you're not trying to create bad. I suppose, like, as you reflect on 30 years in the sector, what are some of the key things that have changed in that period? Because I'd be really interested to see, I've only had 10 years in the sector, I'd be really interested to see what happened 30 years ago. Were we in the same spot then, or has things changed a lot then?
Well, 30 years ago, homes were more plentiful than they are now.
Of course.
We weren't rationing a scarce resource, and there wasn't the spotlight on the housing crisis and the role social housing or the lack of it plays in that. So times are much tougher now. Yeah, and I was more junior, obviously, and was kind of insulated to some of that hard stuff and the stuff that we do now. But everybody had somewhere to live, or most people had somewhere to live. We're not there now. So over my 30 years in the sector, actually what we've seen is policy intervention after policy intervention that has meant that we have over 1 million people on social housing waiting lists. We have record numbers of homelessness. I think we spent £2 billion as a country last year on housing people in temporary accommodation, and some of that is really, really poor, and it ain't temporary. So have my 30 years in the sector seen us get better? No. Do I hope that some of the stuff that we do as a sector and some of the policy work that we do and some of the stuff that CIH and the NatFed do, for example, will help educate people about why we need much more social housing? Absolutely. It's why I get out of bed every day. And so, things have changed, but society's changed, and we seem to value property in terms of money rather than provision of a home. And for me, it's always been about providing homes, making sure that our citizens are well housed. And if we didn't learn that lesson during the pandemic, I really don't know when we will. Yeah,
it's a great point. I think one reflection I have is the constant changing of the narrative, certainly politically in terms of, and I never get into politics, but I do think we keep changing the narrative, and that makes it really difficult as a sector to settle on a business plan. We're writing 30-year business plans. I don't know how, because it changes so frequently. It's difficult to write one for the next 6 months, but that's where we are. As we look today, I mean, one thing I suppose for the listeners, just give us a helicopter overview of Grand Union as we stand here today as a business.
So we try and be a force for good. We don't always get it right. We've got stuff to do, but actually we try and be a force of good. We talk a lot about what we do matters. It's we all have hashtags. We have a what we do matters hashtag. And that's about making sure that people understand that what we do as colleagues matters to one another, what we do with our customers, and it's a real privilege to walk alongside our customers for parts of their lives to support them to be well housed. So we talk about what we do matters. We're clearly, clearly there are huge challenges. We've got, decarbonisation. We want to still build homes. But actually what we are really about is using good insight data to provide targeted and tailored personalised interventions to our customers at the point at which they need them. And so we've kind of thrown the policy says yes or policy says no book away. And for us, it's about, and that's hard. It's a big cultural change because, we have people who've been with us long enough to say, well, we don't do that. We don't do that for everybody, so we shouldn't do it for anybody. Well, actually, that's not creating proper equality, is it? It's, equality is about having a different intervention for a person to enable a similar outcome. And so for me, that's what we're about, is really trying hard to, and there's loads of components to it. It's not just about people, it's about systems, having a system that's flexible, that allows you to do something for one person that you wouldn't do for another. It's those sorts of things that enable us to do that. So I'd say that's where Grand Union are. And also in terms of our diversity and inclusion group, we have a belonging group who work hard to help us understand different needs and points of view and customs and ways of looking at things, and that's rolling that out in our customer service offer is important too.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple of follow-ups on that, if you don't mind. Firstly, I had to Google this on Friday. Psychographics, explain what one of those is, because I'm sure they're pretty commonplace, but I didn't understand what one was. And secondly, how have you used those to shape your services? Because you are a leader in the sector for this. So to talk us a little bit how you've implemented it and how important a role that plays in this bespoke service that you're delivering to your customers.
Psychographics is a game changer.
Right.
I can remember looking at it and thinking, I'm going to swear now, but I'm thinking, oh shit, I've been doing it wrong all these years. Because actually, for me, psychographic segmentation, a segmentation is just the means by which you can divide a customer base into features. So we'd done demographic segmentation, which told us 35-year-olds orders more money. Well, so what? But a psychographic segmentation looks at the beliefs and capabilities of your customer base and enables you to tailor interventions. So we've got a part of our customer base. Our segments are named after. And this is a service design tool. It's not an individual labelling tool. Yeah, we're not saying, oh, Mrs. Miggins, you're in nurture, therefore you get that, because that's just a different kind of sheep dip, isn't it? For me, it's about making sure that we use data to drive service design that enables our policy, our interventions to be successful and help sustain tenancies and enable people to live good lives in the homes that we provide. So how have we used it? Well, we switched the chatbot off because actually that really, really irritates people. We are looking at, so we have a group of customers who struggle with anxiety and capability in terms of physical capability. 75% of our customers live with at least one health condition. 12% of our customers live with at least 5 health conditions. That has a massive impact from the way. So when thinking about in the pandemic, we were all checking on vulnerable people, weren't we? We decided they were vulnerable because they were over 75. They're not our most vulnerable people. Our people who need most from us and are less likely to ask for it are aged between 35 and 54. They have multiple health conditions. They have, they're driven by a level of anxiety and depression that stops them, that makes life really difficult for them. Actually, they're the people we should be focusing on. And so for example, I think one of the things that housing does and landlords do is we'll charge him with a load of services at the point at which people owe us money or doing, they're being cuckooed or have antisocial behaviour or all sorts of things. Well, actually, by asking a few questions, one of the things that you can do is work out, well, this person might need some, and also by looking at the presenting behaviour, that's what we say to people. So what's the presenting behaviour? If they're shouting at you and they're angry, actually they're frustrated, they can't get their point across. It's if they're withdrawn. So you look at the presenting behaviour and we will decide a different service intervention. So at the start of a tenancy, for example, we may decorate and carpet. We can't afford to decorate and carpet everybody, but if we can decorate and carpet, then actually that gives people a bit better start than they otherwise would have. And we'll put in, we have these wonderful roles called customer partners, and they're because they walk alongside customers who will help with things like sourcing white goods and furnishing, because it's about giving that best start. And, the sector's lost a lot of trust. The way we can rebuild trust is to properly understand who our customers are and to bespoke the service to a certain degree that actually to quite a big degree, I think, at Grand Union, to a degree that enables us to help them understand that we can be trusted because we are listening to what they what they are saying. We have a whole group of people who we call our deliver segment that want a really smart, efficient digital offer from us. They want us to turn up when we say we're going to turn up, fix what they want us to fix, and go away again. And actually, we are over-serving that group of people massively.
So interesting, yeah.
So you release resource from stuffing over-serving people who don't need it and put it into helping people succeed in the tenancies you give before the point at which they come into crisis.
Yeah. And like you said, if people are leading with anxiety, even delivering a repairs service to those individuals is different. Your customer service has got to accommodate that, hasn't it? So that's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. The other thing I always get from you and a sense of from your social media as well is about organizational culture is very important to you as a person, but also as your organization. But how have you helped create the flexibility, the inclusion, all the things that you need in an organisation? And what does that sort of look like today in Grand Union? I know you said lead with kindness and a few other things, but what other things have you done to ensure that your culture is flexible and inclusive and all the other things?
I think it's about who you be. Mm-hmm. People want, leaders in organisations, I always say this to people, bloody behave well because people copy it. So actually, where you see bullying cultures, actually that's because they're copying that bullying behaviour that they've seen, because they think that that's what is the norm around there and that's how they should be. And, in some organisations, it takes an awful lot of courage for somebody to swim against that tide. Actually, the behaviour I want people to copy and see at Grand Union is compassion and kindness. That doesn't mean pushover. We do difficult stuff, but we do it with kindness and respect. It is about that kindness and respect for our customers, kindness and respect for one another, kindness and respect for our partners. It is also as well about being really open and really transparent, because again, if you want to build trust, then you have to demonstrate that transparency. So for me, the things are around that sharing of information, sharing about who you are. I suppose I'm at the opposite end of the scale to some people where I'm quite open. If I'm not feeling great, people will say, "You sure you're all right, Aileen?" Because you don't, because actually, because people know. So you make it all right for people by being that, being kind, being organisationally kind, being compassionate, talking about humanity and the things that are going on in people's lives, because people don't walk through their front door, particularly not now, don't walk through their front door at night, if they're lucky enough to have one, and think, well, I could leave all my work at home. And they don't walk in the door of work, which is probably their bedroom, and think, well, I can leave all my home stuff. People are people. There's no such thing as work-life balance. There is only life. And for me, it's about enabling people to be who they are by being who I am, and by Phil Hardy, our ops director, being who he is, and Mona Shah, our exec director of finance, being who she is. It's about enabling that platform.
Yeah, I agree, and it leads me on nicely. Actually, I just wanted to segue into kind of, what do you think the future of talent looks like? So firstly, kind of, how do we ensure that the next generation sees housing as a career of choice? And not even the next generation, really. How do we make housing a career of choice for people? I suppose let's start there, actually. So how do we make it a career of choice as a sector?
So I think we have to start young. So I did a Zoom presentation to schools in Liverpool of year sixes. So there were 10, 11, 12. So I said, so who lives in a house, or who lives in a home? And home is really, really important, isn't it? Would you say home's? So there's all these kids. It's a bit difficult with all these classes on. And I had photos of me in a digger with a hard hat and stuff like that. And so it is about getting people to think about where they live, and thinking about how where people live can be a profession. I also did, so I do talks in schools.
Yeah.
I do career talks in schools, and I was really proud of myself. For International Women's Day, I did a presentation to a group of female sixth formers around all the women that work in housing and all the jobs you can have. I think we talk about housing, but we don't realise the breadth of careers that people can have. So it's for accountants, it's for HR people, it's for surveyors, it's for quantity surveyors, it's for IT people. God, thank God for IT people. It's for, it's not just housing. We need to talk about the range that housing can offer. And the CIH has a real role in this. And then we need to provide really good education and professional development and support. And people can see that. People want careers with purpose, I think. Yeah. People care about the things that they do adding value to the world, probably now more than ever. And Agreed. So I think that actually housing is a real career with purpose. And that's the stuff we should talk about. That's the stuff that so I just talked about all the women in my organisation that have made I chose a supported housing scheme for one individual who had been in a secure unit because nobody knew what to do with him, really. And we were appalled, actually, by some of the practice. But I talked about all the women in my organisation that have made that happen for one person. And actually, if we look across the sector, that happens every day in spades.
Absolutely.
Thousands of settings. Actually, who wouldn't want a career like that? Who wouldn't want a career like that? Because it's massive. It's huge.
Yeah, I agree. And on that, I suppose, 30 years in the sector, you'll have had lots of experience of developing leaders. I think one of the important things we've got to do is bring a next wave and a next generation of leader through our organisation. How do we nurture and cultivate the right leadership skills that we need for the future, but also how do we instill that knowledge and that experience into people so that we can create effective leaders for the future?
I think it's about starting young. I think it's about starting when people come in to your organisation, and accept that you will invest in people and people will leave. But actually, if they leave and they go elsewhere in the sector, that's fine, because we're supporting the sector. I'm not, investing people. And then somebody said to me, a few years ago now. You will be horrified at this, but they said, somebody said, so why haven't you trained these people? Well, if I train them, they'll leave. Yeah, but if you don't train them, they'll stay. And so there is something about. So we have a leadership development. We call it our leadership elevator, that looks at the various stages of leadership development that people need to undertake in their careers. So we have firm foundations, which enables people to get their first rung on the ladder, and then we have aspiring leaders and operations leaders, and so we have an intervention. We've run 2 ops leader courses and promoted 2 women as a result of that, and the education and the stuff that's been created around them before that, but 2 women in leadership positions in running our maintenance service, actually, and they're bloody brilliant. They're really, really good. But it's about giving that confidence and creating that organisation where people can say, do you know what, I quite fancy doing that, and then being able to have a conversation with somebody that says, okay, what do I need? What do I need? And so, and the mandatory qualifications, I think, will help with that. I think that's a good thing because it will give that base knowledge. Also, the professional standards framework that the CIH have got, our leadership elevator work at Grand Union is very closely allied to the professional standards, and it is about that starting early, layering young, and then layering skills and experience, and so we have some middle managers in our organisation managing risks, for example. So managing a risk on our risk register, because that's the stuff that helps them get the real life experience of managing risk. Otherwise, you get into a job and they think, oh, right, okay, risk management, what's that all about? Actually, it's a key part of what we do. And so it's about creating that climate, really, and creating the like climate where people can see it so they know they can be it, but also then putting in a series of interventions that people can see and ask for and volunteer for, that enables them to do to get the experience and the exposure around the business that they need.
Yeah, and I think there's been quite a common theme through this episode, which I've really enjoyed, which I think open leadership's been your big thing. And one thing that I speak to a lot of people, is, as I'm sure you are, at exec level, and I think one thing that deters people is they don't have an open relationship where they can ask. And clearly that's the key part here, is that I speak to lots of people who go, oh, I won't put my name into the hat for that role because I've not got the experience or I've not got the quality, whatever it might be. And actually, I think if we create chief executives and leaders that can encourage people to challenge and test themselves, I think we'll get on much better. As we come to a close here, one thing that I just want to understand is kind of, what are you excited about in the future? What are you still wanting to see the sector achieve in the future? And I suppose, what do you want Grand Union to continue to flourish at?
So there's still a housing crisis to solve, and the sector has a massive part to play in that. And I kind of feel a bit like that's my life's work, really, is drawing attention to the impact that poor housing or no housing has on people's life chances. My dad was a miner and my mum was a hospital receptionist. They were able to afford a home. They wouldn't have been able to do that now. And as a result, I grew up in a stable family background with the ability to not have to change schools every 20 minutes. So there's still a housing crisis to solve. I think the sector really has to get to grips with its customer service offer, and that needs to be much better. But I think the green shoots of that are coming, and I'm excited about that. I think the sector has to find its campaigning voice. Again, not in a belligerent, critical way, but in a way that says things could be better and here's how we can help you. So I think for often housing providers have been seen as part of the problem, when actually I think we need to offer solutions and be seen as part of the solution. So that's the stuff that gives me hope. That and the people in my organisation who every single day go several extra miles to do their best for one another and for our customers, and creating an environment where that is easy for them to do, I regard as my job. So for me, that's what fills me with hope. And you have to keep on keeping on. You can't give up. While ever there's injustice in the world, while ever people aren't well housed, while ever people are not getting good service, actually, there's work for us to do, and we just need to keep on doing it.
Yeah, I mean, what a lovely way to finish. It goes without saying, but I think it's lovely to speak to you and understand your insights from 30 years in the sector, but also you're still as passionate as I imagine you were 10, 20, 30 years ago about creating purpose and solving some of the key challenges in our sector. And honestly, it's lovely to hear that you're still being outspoken and talking about what you believe in and being passionate about that. So I really appreciate your time and thank you for coming on the podcast.
Oh, that's my pleasure. Thank you for asking me. It's quite humbling to do this stuff, and because you get to talk about yourself, and actually it's not a thing. It's because it's not me. I stand on the shoulders of giants at Grand Union, and the people around me, they are just absolutely wonderful. I'm just a bit gobby, and I can talk about it. That's all.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Hip. If you'd like to hear more from us, please be sure to follow us on your favourite podcast platform. We are also running a 30-minute clinic free of charge to any clients that want to recruit in a more inclusive way. For more information, please reach out to us on our website, andersonjames.com.